All right, thanks very much, Carrie. And final speaker, Sonia Barbosa from Harvard and IQSS Dataverse project, who will talk to us, at least in part, about a project they have going with the American Journal of Political Science.
Hello, everyone. How are you? So I'm Sonia. I manage curation for Harvard's Dataverse repository, and I also manage the Murray Research Archive. I've been processing and curating data for over 22 years, so I play a big role in making sure that the data that are coming into Harvard's repository are curated well for accessibility and data sharing. So let's see. So the Dataverse project is an open source research data repository software developed at Harvard University. It's open to researchers, institutions, journals, and developers, and others. And we have 33 installations of this software around the world, but each installation, each repository determines the type of data that they're going to bring in and manage. And so today's presentation really is about the workflow that we're using at Harvard to help journals share their data and to share their data well. So a few colleagues recently looked at data policies of highly ranked social science journals because we have an initiative at our repository with the Sloan Foundation to help journals share their data and to share it well. They analyzed the instructions and policies of 291 highly ranked journals publishing social science research, and they examined the contents of journal data policies and instructions across 14 variables, such as when and how authors are asked to share their data, what role journal ranking and age play in the existence and quality of data policies and instructions. And they found that a little more than half of the journals in their study had data policies. A greater share of the economic journals had data policies and mandated sharing, followed by political science, international relations, and psychology journals. Now, I only pulled up these two graphs because I wanted to talk about the location of data by discipline. So in anthropology, as you can see, the other is red, the blue is journal, and the green is repository. So by discipline, you can see who's sharing data in repositories, right? Which journals are sharing data in the repositories. And you'll see that economics, which is the Sloan Grant, really does have a push, an incentive to bring economics journals into data sharing. But poli-sci and international journals are also relations journals are also doing a lot of sharing in repositories. So as someone who manages a repository, you want to make sure that you are offering these groups good workflows so that they can share their data well and that they're sharing the data that they need to be sharing. Now, location of data by policy source. The same thing, other journal repositories being green, associations, you know, they're really sharing or encouraging data sharing in the journal. Journals are about even in where they are recommending that data be shared. Publishers, however, are mainly using repositories out of the sample that was analyzed. So the Dataverse has within the software several different workflows for helping journals bring their data in. I mean, it's hard enough to get them to want to share data or get authors to do it, so you don't want to make it too complicated, but we do offer various levels of complex data sharing options that they can use. So for the first one, we tell journals to come in and create a space on Harvard's Dataverse for your authors. You give them a permanent URL, they come into your space, they create an account, they deposit their data. And the workflow we recommend with this option one is that you review the submissions and you publish it as the journal editor or whoever's managing this journal space on Harvard's Dataverse. So the author doesn't get to just come in and put in half of the project and publish it. The journal editor reviews to make sure that, one, it belongs to the author, it's the right data, they've submitted whatever, even if they don't have a requirement on everything that should be submitted. The person running that space will determine if it's enough information to make the data useful, and then the person who manages that space will publish the data set. They also have the option to return that data set to the author directly on the website and say, we need more information, or this is not correct, right? So they can organize all their data sets per article and issues, because metadata is a big part of what we do. They get to review the data set before publishing. They get their data citation with a permanent identifier and a link to the article. So we are heavy promoters of bidirectional linking between the article and the data and the data and the article. Suggested workflow: you deposit your data set when you are submitting your publication to the journal. When you deposit your data set in draft format, you get your DOI. You give that DOI to the journal, and you say, if my publication is accepted, here's the DOI that comes back to the data. Before your data set is published, the DOI of your article would get put into the related publication field on the data set page. You hit publish, and you have bidirectional linking between your article and the data. We have over 90 journals in the Harvard Dataverse right now. As I'm the one who manages curation, the next slide I went through and removed some of those journals because I found that they weren't actually doing everything the way they should do. They should do it, and my job is every day with my team is we go in and we review journals that are coming in. And if they're doing a good job, great, we offer some curation assistance. If they're not doing such a good job of data sharing, we do reach out to them and offer them curation services like the metadata, and offer them documentation for their authors on what they should be including as part of their data sharing. So, I used this sample right here from Harvard's repository to show that 23 of the journals that we looked at in Harvard's repository are actually using the review and publish workflow, where the journal editor most likely gets a notification that an author has submitted a data set for review. They review it and they publish it. And 33 of those journals are not using that workflow. So, data curation and replication verification for journals is the second workflow that we offer. And this is in collaboration with ODM, with the ODM archives. It's an independent third-party curation and verification of the replication data. So what they do is they do step one, which is they establish their space on Harvard's repository, and they give authors the ability to submit their data set. But once that data set is submitted, ODM gets a notification to go in and review that data set to make sure that the codes that were deposited, those files, actually produce the results in the article. They're not there to tell you if your results are correct. They're not the people who are doing the research. They want to make sure, though, that when a user comes to your data set and they run your code, that it gives them the results that are stated in that article. If it's found that that's not the case, the article is sent back to the author, and the publisher, the journal editor, and the author, of course, have to have their conversation. But if it's found that the author has met all of the guidelines that these journals have specified in their policy about files and code, then they are published, the bidirectional linking is set by the editors, and you have a well-established data set. Now, the data sets in these journals, for example, AJPS, which is the American Journal of Political Science, it's one of the journals that I keep a really good eye on because I worked with their editor in setting up their space on Harvard's Dataverse. Their data sets that go through this process receive badges from the Center for Open Science. They get the Open Data Badge, which is earned for making publicly available the digitally shareable data necessary to reproduce the reported results. And they also get the Open Materials Badge, which is earned by making publicly available the components of the research methodology needed to reproduce the reported procedure and analysis. So when someone comes to your data set, they know that due diligence was done in uploading and sharing the files with the research community. Oh, okay. So as you can see, I'm reading my notes off of my laptop, so I got to catch up with everything here. Workflow 3 is integrate your journal system via an API to any Dataverse installation. Harvard's Dataverse is using this integration right now, and we have another installation in Indonesia that has an open journal system, and they are also going to be attempting to use the API for their authors to share data. In this instance, authors submit the data at the same time as the article in the journal system. It's automatic data archiving in Harvard's Dataverse with a citation added to the article, and it's available for journals in the open journal system. Now, this project is in collaboration with the Public Knowledge Project. It was run between 2012 and 2014 to make data sharing and preservation an intrinsic part of the publication process. The collaboration resulted in the development of the plugin that allows authors to deposit data sets and other supplementary files to the network via this deposit API, and it works via the SWORD 2. At the same time as they submit the article in OJS, the plugin complements or replaces OJS's current supplementary files option. Okay, so instead of having to go through OJS, everything gets put directly into the Dataverse repository. And it allows OJS and Dataverse to support seamless publication of data and articles together, and to support new forms of research data, readership, citation, and analysis. Now, the problem is, open journal systems are all about articles. People still like to publish articles. There's still this misunderstanding about data. So I wake up in the morning and I come in and there's 300 data sets that are all PDFs and no files. Unfortunately. And then, we do due diligence by contacting the journal and saying, here's what we're supposed to be doing, and if you'd like to get on board, we're happy to help. A lot of them do not have all of the materials to make available, or even some of the materials to make available, which is really surprising. But we run into this a lot with the journals coming in, especially the international journals in the open journal system, where it's all publications. And of course, everybody is looking for a free DOI. That's not a bad thing, right? Except in our case, it needs to be attached to data. So the publishing workflow is that there's the automatic integration. They submitted the features for automatic data citation insertion goes into the article. Workflows and features for reviewing the data before the article publication. Long-term preservation and persistent access to the data set is made available. New versions of the data set induce new research. This is what we're trying to promote. And we're trying to make it easier and easier for people to be able to share this data and automatically get this kind of workflow. So simply coming in and depositing your data, you get all of this in the back end. And of course, the last option we give for journals is that they recommend a repository. Right? In this case, we'll put a Harvard repository, but that they recommend a repository. As a matter of fact, PLOS sends their authors, as one of the recommended repositories is Harvard's repository. Their authors come in, they deposit a data set. It's not in a journal space. They just deposit it, put in their citation. There's no review process by our team. There's no review process by the editors before it's published, as far as we know, but it's published. We have been talking to them about establishing a review workflow, that they actually take the time. It is time consuming, but that they actually take the time to look at what's being put in before it's published. One of the reasons I with the established workflow where the editors get to review the submissions, you catch a lot of problems. Recently, I came across someone who really needed a place to publish their data set because apparently it wasn't accepted anywhere. So they went into as many journals on the Harvard repository as they could, and they deposited their data set. And the only reason we caught it is because they could not publish it themselves, and we do these daily reviews. So I'm looking at my screen and I see this data set listed 10 times, and I'm like, something is wrong. And luckily, because they could not publish it themselves, we were able to just go in and delete it. And that, I've been working with this system for 20 years, and that, well, not 20 years, Harvard 20 years, since 2006, and that was the first instance that I found of someone actually coming in and attempting to place their data set within a journal that they didn't belong. So let's see. So we do have some special features because we want to encourage data sharing, right? File landing pages where if an author needs to come in and replace a particular file, they can come in and replace that particular file. They have multiple authentication options. A regular username and password, ORCID ID, GitHub, Google. We do authentication for universities and organizations, so my login is always through Harvard University. As long as their institution is registered within Commons, they can establish this authentication for their members. And we also have a private URL for data set review. So when an author submits their article or their data set, the editors can send a private link to an unpublished data set to their reviewers. The reviewers never have to log in. They use that link, they come in, they look at the data set, and then the editor can disable that link after the review is done. So they don't have to log in, there's no record of who's doing the review. It's sent specifically to a person that has that link until it's disabled. And that's it for my presentation.